So, if you're watching this video, you're going to want to sit down and try to relax because based on what I'm about to talk about, I can imagine this video is going to be kind of a longer one. Um, and there's a lot to go through in this video. If you don't know, the co-founder of CD Projekt Red did release a video a couple days ago or so, basically an open apology to the consumers and the fans and the gaming community, apologizing for the launch of Cyberpunk and some of the reasons why things went the way they went. But I got this article today from a friend of mine who, he shared it to me. And the article basically has information about current and former CD Projekt Red employees who were interviewed about the game, and they basically discuss the different issues that the company went through for development. There's also a lot of stuff to go through here, so I'll share the article with you in the link. It'll be a link in the description. If you didn't see my last video talking about the apology video, I'll also put that in the description. There was a lot of information in that video that I talked about, things that I wasn't okay with, and this article does have a bit more information on those things. For some of the things, not all of it, and I will talk about more in detail when I read the notes that I took. I won't be able to read every single thing the article said, but like I said, I'll share that with you in the description. So let's just jump right into this article and talk about what went down with the development of the game from these current and former employees. So one of the things that came up was that when the board and the co-founder greenlit the launch of the game, one of the concerns I had was not being aware of the bugs and glitches that the game had, and they decided to release the game anyway. According to the article, however, it said that while they were testing the game, most of these issues and bugs and glitches weren't present while they were going through the testing phase. But the other thing that happened, because I heard, the argument that maybe they didn't have enough people test the game, maybe they didn't test it properly, maybe they tested on certain consoles and not other consoles, so they're denying that there was any bugs that came up. Developers, however, are arguing that statement and saying that they were bugs and glitches that were they were aware of, and that there were a lot of common problems that was discovered, but the staff apparently didn't have the time to fix it. Now, I don't know if that comes down to the higher ups, forcing them to get the game out as quickly as they could despite all the delays. It could be some other corporate behind the scenes trickery or whatever, but it does show that these employees who worked on the game were straight up and said these are issues that came up that they denied. They basically said those things weren't existent. So if you want to think about who is trustworthy there, it's got to be the people who actually built the game, who worked on the game. But it does get more in detail in terms of that. There's a lot more that goes on. It's not just that. So moving on, they said that basically the company stretched themselves too far, and what they try to do is they try to develop the engine for the game so that it can do what it needs to do. They try to develop the engine of the game while developing the game itself simultaneously, and it was like a new engine they were trying to do, something they weren't familiar with, and they said that's what kind of helped to slow down production of the game. Now, a better way to understand this, according to one of these developers, is that they said it's kind of like when you are trying to drive a train, and while you're driving the train, the tracks are being built in front of you while the train is trying to be moved. So basically, why are you going to try to develop the game if you don't even have the engine for the game already developed? You know what I'm saying? So that's what they claim is another big issue, and I believe that would make a big issue in the game's development. So I give them that, as a good point, that's another reason why the game is failing the way it is. One of the workers, I guess a colleague, was asking how would the game pull off a technically more challenging project in the same time frame as The Witcher. So I'm thinking what they meant by that is, they developed Cyberpunk, or started developing it supposedly around the time The Witcher was being finished and being released. And the response they got is, we'll figure it out along the way. That's not a good mindset to have when you're developing a major AAA game. You can't just say, we'll figure it out, because that's not how things work, especially for something like this. You should have the plan figured out so that you can make the moves to have the plan go. That's why when plans are being made and they say, we'll figure it out, that's why those plans fail. You need to have the idea, have the plan for the project before you can implement the project. That's just common sense. And it feels like that they were just trying to figure it out as they get going, figure it out along the way, because either they had no idea what they were going to do, or they were too cocky and thought that they could, succeed on this new IP, new idea, new project because of the success of the previous game. I will get into that a little bit more later on. But moving on, it says studio head Adam Badowski took over as director, demanding overhauls to Cyberpunk's gameplay and story. For the next year, everything was changing, including fundamental elements like the gameplay perspective. Top staff who had worked on The Witcher 3 had strong opinions on how Cyberpunk should be made, which clashed with Badowski and led to the eventual departure of several top developers. So, that was a big paragraph. Basically, there was developers who worked on The Witcher who were being put in these important development roles for Cyberpunk, and they told the new director, "Look, we think this is how the game should be. We think based on our experience, this will work better than this idea." And this dude Badowski basically said, "Fuck you, I'm in charge. You're gonna do it this way." That's clearly what it basically says. It doesn't literally say "fuck you" in the article, but that's basically the mindset that I get from reading that. And then, as you can see, those developers ended up leaving the company because they probably don't want to work for someone who doesn't understand what these developers know in terms of their field, their experience. They know how things should go. They're telling you how it should go to benefit you, your finances, your company, the success of the launch, and you're just saying fuck you to your employees, and that's not a good mindset to have. Moving on, we have fans and journalists were wowed by Cyberpunk's 2077 ambition and scale. What they didn't know was that the demo was almost entirely fake. Side note, this is referencing to an E3 demo they had. I don't remember what year it was exactly, but there was an E3 demo that showed off some of the gameplay elements and mechanics, and they're saying that it was a fake demo. It says CD Projekt hadn't yet finalized and coded the underlying gameplay systems, which is why so many features, such as car ambushes, were missing from the final product. Developers said they felt like the demo was a waste of months. They should have gone towards making the game. So, I understand that for these major conventions and events like E3, you want to show something to the fans, the gamers. You want to show them that you're still working on the game, it's still going to happen. But to show them something that's entirely fake. Now, it's kind of close to the controversy of Watch Dogs, the first one, where the game looked amazing on the demo for E3, and then it didn't look as good at release. The game didn't look terrible. It didn't look like dog shit, but it just didn't look as good as the E3 demo. But it was still the same game. You still had the same mechanics, the same features. For you to have an entire demo that you created over a number of months to be completely fake and not part of the actual game, like they said, that could have been time used towards the game. I don't think that little bit of time, however many months it is, would benefit the game strongly, but it would benefit it a little bit. It'll put somewhat of a dent into this bad launch. So that's just kind of like a really hard thing to read, you know. It says here employees were working long hours, even though Iwinski told the staff that overtime wouldn't be mandatory on Cyberpunk. More than a dozen workers said they felt pressure to put in extra hours by their managers or coworkers anyway. So, going to this point, they claim it wasn't mandatory to put these hours in, but when you have a deadline and the deadline is getting pushed back a number of times until you get a final deadline, and you know that you have a big role to play with this development, that you are part of something big, whether you're focused on one element or one mechanic of the game, it's all important. And so yes, I can understand they felt pressured to do more hours and to have to stay overtime. I don't know if they were getting paid for the overtime or if it was, however they do it in Poland, time and a half or whatever. But they felt pressured to have to stay in. There was actually a point in the article where they mentioned how one of the persons in the interviews knows colleagues who lost their families because of this kind of overtime, crunch times and stuff. And it's just crappy to see that, you're forcing someone, you're saying you're not forcing them, but they feel forced and pressured into putting more time into this project that the higher ups don't know how to run properly. And you may be costing these employees their families. That's really shitty. Moving on, it says there are times where I would work crunch up to 13 hours a day A little bit over that was my record probably, and I would do 5 days a week working like that. 13 hours a day, that's more than half the day of you working on a game that still didn't do good and still had a failed launch. And that's going to put a strain on your family. Your spouse and your children are going to be upset because you're spending too much time on a game that, isn't really benefiting you or your health or your sleep. It happens with, you never know what's going to happen with these games and development processes. But I just don't think it's, right that you have these employees felt pressure to work the extra time. Um, and it's crazy because in the next point I'm going to tell you now, it's really interesting that this, something else that happened, which I didn't know, was that it says canceling features and scaling down the size of Cyberpunk's Metropolis helped, but the team's growth hampered some departments, developers said. So I didn't know that they even scaled down the size of the city. If you don't know, Cyberpunk does have a really huge map. It's a big size map. There's a lot of detail in the city and the area around. The map is huge, but the fact that it was even bigger before and they had to scale down it to make it smaller just to make it work a little bit better and quicker, it makes me wonder what did they take out and how important was the things they took out, because I think the map is a good size as it is. I think it's a fine size. Sorry, I moved the tripod. I think it's a fine size of map, so I don't really understand or really know how much bigger it could have been. That's impressive. Let's see what else they said. They said while The Witcher 3 was created by roughly 240 in-house staff, the company does show in the credits that they had well over 500 internal developers. But it says that the company isn't accustomed to such a huge size, and that the company just felt like the size of the employees were just unorganized, probably not knowing how to properly organize the employees and what they do and where they belong. But they also said they felt like the game, or rather the team size, was understaffed because you have games like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption 2 that claims to have been developed by thousands of people over a course of dozens of offices. Now, it's kind of hard to compare the two companies simply because while CD Projekt Red claims to be in business for about 25 years, what else have they done besides these video games? Like, what is their track record? What do we know that they've done? When you look at Rockstar Games, they made so many games throughout all the years. They made so many Grand Theft Auto games, 3 Red Dead games. They made Bully, Max Payne series, Manhunt. So many games they made, and they probably have the years experience to be able to manage X amount of employees throughout X amount of offices. But it also comes down to communication. I do have a part in the article that I believe talked about communication a little bit. If I remember, the article did say that the company made it mandatory for each employee to speak English with one another, and some employees didn't want to follow that rule. They wanted to speak, their language, which I believe if Polish is a language, they spoke, Polish. So it comes down to communication. If your employees are not communicating with each other properly to get the proper thing done, to get the proper mechanic taken care of course communication is going to be bad. Even in the apology video, they mentioned because of the pandemic and working from home, a lot of things get lost through phone calls and email. And I didn't mention in that video that it is about your employees' communication or poor communication skills. This further proves it in that article about the communication. Just because your team did grow in size and you feel like it's not as many employees as Grand Theft Auto, or Rockstar for GTA 5 and Red Dead 2, you have to look at, okay, number one, maybe their employees communicated with each other better. Two, they did have the benefit of not having a pandemic to work through, but the pandemic is only affecting about a year of development, if that. So you still had about 6 or 7 years prior of development, which who knows what they were doing for that time. Maybe they were sitting on their asses doing nothing with their fingers up their asses. I don't know. But you also have to consider that um, GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 do also have a lot more mechanics than Cyberpunk has. Because sure, Cyberpunk has create your own character and customize your own cyber junk, and you can interact with certain NPCs with different dialogue options. And they do have the different weapons and how they reload and shoot and the different cars and interiors. But look at GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. They have an entire massive, full of content and detail single player and they have a fully massive, full of content and detailed multiplayer with a huge number of online players in one lobby, up to like 30 players, I believe. So it's really hard to believe these things from CD Projekt Red when you see other companies doing it fine, and you may have some legit excuses for why you didn't do as well, but you're not giving us the right excuses, okay? So the last point I'm going to make in this video, because it has been going on too long, so this is the last point I'll make about this article. It says some engineers realized that Cyberpunk was too complex of a game to run well on the 7-year-old consoles, with its city full of bustling crowds and hulking buildings. They said management dismissed their concerns, however, citing their success in pulling off The Witcher 3. So what they basically mean by that is they felt that the game shouldn't have released on PS4 and Xbox One. They felt that those consoles were too old to be able to handle this game, and the higher ups said, "No, you guys did really good on Witcher 3, so you should be able to do good in this one." That's just not, good right there. There was a part in the article as well that said they wanted it to put the game on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. Some developers wanted that because they felt that would work better for the game. But there was others, like higher ups, who wanted the game to be released before those consoles were even announced. So we're talking maybe they wanted it to release by 2018, 2019, roughly 2017, around that 3-year time frame. So if you're developers who are the ones who know what they're doing and they know how well a game can run and how poorly it can run, they understand you want it on a certain console, or you want it on as many consoles as you want, because you want it to reach as many gamers as you want. But if they feel like the game wasn't going to work well on these base consoles, or these last gen consoles, and they said we should just put it for the next gen, for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, that clearly means that they think the game will do better on those consoles with the time to continue development for those consoles. But it's kind of following EA, what they used to do or still do, where they want to push everything out by a certain date. And you can say it's due to investors. You can say that it's due to the board members and any other higher up external, internal power. I don't know. But ultimately, you shouldn't have to push a product out if it's not going to work. Okay? You can say that, the investors are the ones who are paying the money for the game, so they want their investment to be revealed and released. But it's going to cost them money in the long run anyway, because they're now, they lost a lot of money for the game. They're facing so many different things. Articles are coming out about them. They had an investigation by the CPA. So you got to find a way to talk to the investors and say, here's our plans. Here's what's going to happen. Here's when we expect to have it fully released, fully completed, with as little bugs as we can. And they just fucked up on the whole thing. And it also comes down to their PR person. That person should get fired because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're trying to help the company douse the flames, but they're not giving them the right content or the right material to douse the flames. They're giving them dog shit to give us. This article basically explains a lot, saying basically if it's one thing to take from this article is that the company felt that because they were good with The Witcher 3, which at launch they kind of weren't. It was an amazing game at launch still, but there were still quite a few bugs and glitches. Of course, it's gotten much better. Witcher 3 is fucking amazing. If you haven't played Witcher 3 by now, what the fuck are you doing? Play Witcher 3. It's amazing. But they said, Witcher 3 was amazing. We can then do the same for a new IP. And we can do whatever we want because it's going to work out for us. Sorry, that's not going to work out for you. Just because you tried something once one way, it may not work again the second time. Or if you try something once and it worked, you maybe want to follow I'm not making sense right now. Basically, they clearly had a different strategy for this game when they released it, or were developing it, sorry. And the strategy didn't work. Why are you going to make the engine while making the game? It's not going to work. Why are you not listening to your developers telling you their concerns? And honestly, this ain't the end. There's gonna be more coming out soon. You know, there's gonna be more information coming out within this coming week. Um, some even think this is the end of CD Projekt Red. They think that this is the nail in their coffin to end the company. I don't think that so much, because if that's the case, EA should have been gone. I think while this is a lot for them to handle, they do believe that they can turn this around and that it will be an uphill battle. Their words, not mine. They think that they can make it work. And with time, maybe they can, maybe they won't. They definitely won't if they keep on with the bullshit they're keeping on. If they instead listen to their developers, listen to the fans, listen to what they think should benefit the game, then the game could possibly turn around. I'm sorry this is a long video. There's a lot to go through. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will continue to enjoy the other videos that I put out for you guys. So if you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Have a good weekend. Happy MLK Day coming up this Monday. See you guys later.